I'm very silly backstage. I'm silly until the moment we go on because I get super nervous. The antidote for that, for me, is silliness.
Congratulations on your third Tony nomination.
Thank you.
Where were you when you found out that you'd been nominated?
I was at home. I love not knowing when they will come out. I love just forgetting all about that because I'm, of course, it creates so much anxiety either way. But a couple of people had said, "Oh my God, they're coming out tomorrow." So I walked the dog, I had my bagel, and then I was like, okay, people are saying what was nominated. Let me try to go online. And I just couldn't get it together. And so about 9:20, I started to get texts. And I thought, oh, thank you. Thank you, my friends. So I was at my kitchen table finishing a bagel.
Did it feel different getting nominated this time versus the other time?
The first time was that experience of doing an Arthur Miller play and being with Lee Evans Scarlett was so precious because Arthur is and was my truly favorite writer, and there's something about elevating your sense of self because you're doing that kind of work that you think it shouldn't matter. This is such a rarefied experience. And to be honest, when I was doing Summer 1976, Laura was my goddess. So I wish we had experienced that together. And it just goes to show that it's random because she made the whole thing work. And then this one was really delicious.
What was sort of the most difficult part of the show?
To not make it a satire. I was very anxious about that when we were developing it. I think the kind of use for satire when you're dealing with stuff that could at times be considered woke subjects or, the way in which we're navigating, the way in which many left-leaning people are navigating life has been the subject of a lot of comedy. And I was desperate for it not to fall into that. So to kind of create something that made people think they knew the characters was essential for me.
Do you have any pre-show rituals or anything you do to sort of get ready?
I do. I sing show tunes. I'm not a great singer, but I can sort of carry a tune. And I have a little library of show tunes that I don't realize I have. But when I go backstage or even in the dressing room, mostly when I'm backstage, I just kind of let them out. If you just said something to me and I saw that there was an opening to use one word you threw at me as the start of a show tune, I just do it. And most of my cast really indulge that. I'm very silly backstage. I'm silly until the moment we go on because I get super nervous. And the only way the antidote for that, for me, is silliness.
You're in the movie Eleanor the Great, which is coming out
and
just had its Cannes release. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love June Squibb.
Oh
She's such an icon. What was it like getting to work with her?
She was so awesome. First of all, she was a huge theater star. People don't realize that. She was a hoofer. She was a great dancer and singer. She was iconic in these, she was in these wonderful character parts in musicals. She's so clear, she knows herself, and she has such a way of focusing everything. And she's also just a beautiful energy. She's just so present. So it was incredible to work with her.
And then Scarlett Johansson is the director, and this is the first movie that she's directed. And you've worked with, obviously, lots of directors in your career. How was it having her direct?
Absolutely wonderful. First of all, she's very girlfriendy. She'll be like, the first few minutes is anyway talking about your outfit and your food intake. And then she's very specific about what it should be. She understands filmmaking so precisely, and so the way in which she directs is utterly doable and also really helps to make the scene as perfect a storytelling vehicle as possible. The biggest thing for actors is that you feel like you're playing the same thing over and over again. That's what you're always worried about. And she drops you into such a human and specific place. She's wonderful.
And then you were also in Friends, obviously.
Yeah.
And you were in the early seasons, the first couple episodes. What was it like filming that so early, before it really became a big success? What was the vibe on the set then?
Yeah, such a good question, because a lot of people associate me with that show but don't acknowledge that I've had this tremendous luck with several shows that I've done. It's been so fortunate that because the same thing with Breaking Bad, if you're at the very beginning, you don't know what it's going to be. So you're just there trying to help them figure out what the show is. And you don't feel the weight of its history because it has no history and you don't know what it'll be. So for me on Friends, it's not that it was casual, but the show was not iconic by any stretch. So I had more creativity and I had more of a sense of just trusting my gut about what I wanted to do with this character. And Jane Sibbett, who played my beautiful wife, we were so locked into each other. So it was mostly about our energy together.
And then I read online that you also had originally auditioned for the role of Monica.
Can you believe that?
Do you ever think about like the sliding doors of like what would have happened if you would have been cast?
I think it was a total backup because I knew the casting director from high school. This woman, Ellie Canner, I was out in Los Angeles and my agent said, oh, I sent your picture in to this casting director for Friends. And there's one part they're not sure the actor will take it. They want to still look at some other actors. And I think she knows you from high school. So I went in mostly excited to see Ellie Canner. And then they started to read me for Monica. But I think looking at me, and back then, I mean, I'm tall and I just had a bigger size than the rest. I think the idea of how, now I look at it and I think how perfect Courtney was. I would have been more of a Lisa, just physically and energetically. But they just couldn't figure out how to make Susan work because it's terrible, but they just wanted a lesbian that didn't look exactly like lesbians had looked previously. Let's be honest. I was like, really? Well, here's your imagination. Anyway. Yeah. They're wonderful, but they come in all sizes.
Yes, and we do know that now that we're out of the 90s. You're also in Dan in Real Life, which is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
I've seen it so many times.
God, that's so lovely.
What was it? I watched that and it just looks like so much fun. You guys are all staying in this big house and doing these crossword puzzle competitions and things. Like, what was it like filming that?
Awesome. Oh my God. Peter Hedges is a great director and he had us doing all this family stuff to get into the character of the family. But come on, the family was Amy Ryan, one of the greatest actors ever. She was my great friend as well. But Amy Ryan, Norbert, I mean, it was an amazing family. John Mahoney was the dad. Diane Wiest was the mom. And we sat around, first couple days we sang Bob Dylan songs as a family and ate pancakes. And then Juliet came, and she's actually very girlfriendy and wonderful. And I couldn't believe I was with Juliette Binoche. And it was fabulous. It was as advertised, great. Yeah.
And then you were also in Succession, and so many Broadway people were in various episodes.
Episode.
Was that sort of like a thing that was going around in the community of like, oh, like, have you done Succession yet? Oh, yeah, I've done it. Oh, have you done it?
It was early on, maybe the second season, and I don't watch a lot of TV, and they were like, it's a small part, but people seem to like this show, and I always get, what you do there, and also you just don't get paid a lot in the theater, so this is a nice way to make a little cash. So I also had no idea what the thing was, and I just had the most wonderful day there, a couple days, yeah.
You've been in so many different things. What is it that you get recognized most often for?
Oh, that's a really good question. Breaking Bad, and then Friends, and then a show that I loved doing, which was The Sinner. And for a while, that was running a lot during COVID. I think it has to do with what's popular.
I saw you've been in 4 different Law and Order episodes, I think, and then some other sort of like
evil,
like
never a good character.
How is it playing in those, like, where you just pop in and are playing a corpse or a killer or a lawyer or
crying for dollars. Someone calls that crying for dollars because Amy Ryan actually coined that phrase, which is so funny. All those shows require a little crying. They're fun. They're a real testament to the actual, I guess I would call it the trade of acting, which, you have a job to do, which is to play this person who's suffering in some way or anguished in some way. And
what is sort of like the oddest or weirdest part that you've ever taken in one of these?
I think I did one where I played a slave owner. It's so bad that I just have to say it. I think I had taken a couple of kids from Haiti and I enslaved them. I run an organization for protection of refugees, so it's so messed up that I can't even imagine.
What show was that?
That was a Law and Order spin-off. I've played some really wonky ones, yeah. I played a nun in a few things. I played a few nuns. I played a nun for Sally Field in her first movie that she directed called A Christmas Tree.
I love that you played multiple nuns. They're
Multiple
like, we've got a
nuns,
nun
yeah.
role. We know who to call.
Look at me. Who else would you call? Come on.